If you're struggling with capturing cinematic or captivating drone footage, it's probably because you're not using the right settings. You see, I've been flying drones for almost a decade now professionally, and I've made every mistake that a drone pilot could make. And I remember back when I started out, I would watch videos on YouTube or even Instagram, and I would wonder to myself, what do they know that I don't? Like, is there a secret to filming on drones that I don't know? And after much frustration and a lot of trial and error, I found the best settings to film on your drone no matter what time of day. So today I'm breaking down the exact settings that I like to use for these times of day, which is going to be your sunrise, your harsh afternoon daylight, and also your nighttime shoots. Now, the first thing I do before liftoff is switch over to D-Log. Now, the reason I do that, especially when it's a high-paying client, I want to make sure that I'm getting the best quality image that I can and the most dynamic range. And so when you're shooting in D-Log, you're able to manipulate a lot of the footage in post. And so if you're doing this for a client, I highly recommend you must be shooting in D-Log because color grading all of the footage is so much easier when you do. And then you also have the option to turn on the color assist mode. Now what this does, it gives you a better understanding of what the image is going to look like in post, because when you shoot in D-Log, you're going to need to use a conversion LUT. So when you add that conversion LUT in your footage in post, it's going to look exactly like it did when you're using that color assist mode. So I highly recommend always having that on so you know exactly the image that you're getting out of your camera. Now, if you know me or follow me on Instagram, then you know one of my favorite times to fly the drone is during sunrise. I think that's when you get some of the best colors and you don't have people bothering you as much. And so when I get my drone up during sunrise, these are the settings that I like to use that give me the best color, light, and shadows. Now, I usually always shoot in 30 frames a second because that's what Instagram requires. But if you're looking for more of that cinematic shot, or if you're doing it for YouTube or maybe a website video for a client, you could shoot in 24 frames a second. But since it's a sunrise and we're getting some good light being casted on the buildings, on everything else, I really just like to leave it at 30 frames a second because it looks best to me. Now, because this is sunrise, that means the sun is going to be in the shot at some point. So you'll want to make sure to have an ND filter. Now, because it isn't so bright at this time of the day, I like to have the lowest one that I have, which is an ND8. Now, what that does is whether I'm filming some buildings or people on the lake rowing, it cuts off a lot of the reflection that's coming from the water and from the buildings. But also, it allows me to keep my settings exactly the way that I want to. So if I'm shooting at 30 frames a second, I'm going to be at 1/60. And then I'm also going to have my ISO as low as possible, which more than likely will be about 100. Now, for all of the footage that we're going to be talking about today, I always like to shoot in 4K, mainly because if I'm cropping in, it's going to allow me to still get a really good image. Even if I have to do it 50%, it's still producing a 1080p image. Now, when it comes to harsh lighting, like in the afternoon or maybe around 2, 3, 4 o'clock when the sun is the highest, this is when it gets really difficult flying your drone because one, it's very hot. And two, the light is just so bright that you're going to need a very strong ND filter for these. Now, again, if you've been to my channel before, I always recommend ND filters, especially because I live in Texas, and in Texas, the sun is always shining. So I always make sure to keep them in my bag no matter what. Now, the ND filter that I will usually use on a harsh day would be either ND16 or ND32. Now, the reason I say that is because if I'm going for maybe a cool slow motion shot, and I want to shoot at 60 or 120 frames a second, then my filter may be ND16. But if I'm going for more of a cinematic feel and shooting 24 or 30 frames a second, then I'll probably use that ND32. So really, it's all depending on your frame rate and your shutter speed. Now, this is because if you're filming things that are moving, maybe like sports cars, or maybe you're doing some athletic event, you want to keep that motion blur of maybe the runners or the athletes or whatever it is. So ND16, ND32 would be perfect for you to keep your same shutter speed rule, but get the image that you want. Now we're going to be talking about one of the most difficult times to film, which is nighttime. And the reason nighttime is so difficult to film is because there is less lighting. In photography, videography, the most important thing for you is light. And so at nighttime, the light is pretty much gone. Now, living in Austin is great because we have the downtown, and downtown has so many lights to it where it gives you a proper illumination and you can still get a good footage out of it. But that's why I always recommend kind of going into blue hour, into nighttime, so you still have some of the sun in the sky giving you a good image, but you don't have to worry about cranking up that ISO. Now, I've had to do that before because I've been hired for jobs that, I got to film at literally nighttime because that's when the buildings are the brightest. And so I wanted to share with you some of the settings that I use for that. Now again, if you look at the image on screen, it's gonna look grainy and it's gonna look like it has a little bit of noise. But once we add our conversion LUT, you will see that kind of disappears. And with whatever little noise we do have, I like to add a denoiser in post really low on Premiere Pro. And then probably bump up the sharpener a little bit too. Now, when you're filming at nighttime, you have to film at 24 frames a second because you're gonna want your frame rate to be as low as possible. And again, your shutter speed is gonna be 1/50. Now this is where messing with your ISO comes in. Sometimes you want to push it all the way up to 1600, maybe even 3200, depending on how high your drone goes, but also the image that's coming out. Now one of the other reasons it's so difficult to fly at nighttime is because the sensors don't work as well in your drone because it's so dark, and the sensors need that light to be able to determine how far an object is from itself. So again, when you're flying at nighttime, make sure you're paying attention to your lights that are blinking on your drone. Make sure you know where your drone is at. Again, make sure you know the wind speed and all those things. If you don't know any of that, I highly recommend that you download the Drone Buddy app or a couple of apps that I've recommended. I'll link those below because those really keep me understanding how the sky is handling, which will allow me to know how to better handle my drone as well. Now, one of the other things I like to keep in mind when filming is also where I'm going to be posting this content. That's why I like to use the rule of thirds that is on your drone, because if you're going to be filming something for a website, but also for Instagram, using that middle framing that you have on the rule of thirds allows you to know what's going to be cropped in for your social media ads, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Having that rule of thirds to guide you in where your framing is at is something that I never ever turn off. So I highly recommend you turn that on as well. And lastly, I would recommend that you understand your drone modes better. You have your cinematic, your normal, and then your speed. For me, I always go between the cinematic and the normal, just depending on where I'm at and what the shot is that I'm going for. Speed, I usually use when I need to fly the drone back to myself, or if I'm following a car or trying to get like an FPV style look. That's the only time I really push it all the way to the S on the drone controller. But other than that, to me, normal and cinematic have worked best. Cinematic I'll use when I'm trying to go for a slow moving shot, maybe a pan left, pan right. And then the normal I'll use when I'm trying to do fly in, fly out, or if I'm following a subject as well. Now that you know all this, go ahead and fly with confidence, knowing that you're going to capture some of the best cinematic footage that you ever have. And if you like this, make sure to leave a comment down below. If there's anything else that you're struggling with as a creative videographer, photographer, whatever it is, make sure to use that comment section. Let me know what you would like to see more videos about. And more than anything, like, subscribe, and share with anybody who you think needs this information. If you want to learn more about what I do, then click this video right up here. But if you want to see more tutorials and learn a little bit more about camera gear, then click this video right up here. Until next time, catch you on the flip side. Peace out.